We are live.
Hey, I am old new dude, and he is.
Richard York, Ash's 2-born son. It's my fault we're a minute late. I was trying to make sure I knew exactly where we were as I was pulling up the Myronese blot. And this
I
is
got
a
worried
Song of
there
Ice
for
and
a second.
Fire.
The eyeball lets us know that we're streaming. Took a 12 seconds to come on instead of its normal 7.
Tinfoil time. I wait. Well, we're here.
Yep,
We
we
were
really
we
are.
were a minute late, but we are here. And
No,
on
we
this,
weren't a minute late. He was a minute late.
I wasn't quite a minute late, but then by the time we kicked it off, I was a minute late.
Turns out I missed whole days because of stuff that happened. I will allow you to be 1 minute late. Uh,
It just
I
took me
guess,
a little longer to get organized
yeah.
and verify where I was. I'm going to do a better job of that. I'm going to start taking notes when we finish off and not have to scroll through to the end of the YouTube video to try and figure out where we are.
Take a screenshot.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Christy.
Oh, I'm just gonna. Well, I mean, if I'm actually reading somebody else's analysis, then I'm just going to copy where I am and what we last said and where we are, and make a little note to myself because that takes less time to read that than it does to try and
Yeah.
locate where we're talking, especially when we wind up at the end saying goodbyes and people throwing things at the last minute and so forth. It makes it a lot harder to figure out where you were. But
Not one.
anyway, I'll do a better job going forward. So we're really here just to talk about Song of Ice and Fire, um, but um, we have been going through different people's analyses that we like, and we started with the Toodles and Blue Lemon's analysis of Shadrach as Howland Reed. I think we managed to convince ourselves of some things that we maybe hadn't realized prior to that or forgotten that we had, because it wasn't like it was the first time we'd ever looked at these things, but we'd forgotten
Right.
some of the details. And I think by talking through them, it helps me to remember that we do know what happened to some of Ned's other men. We do know where his bones are. We do know. Um, we strongly suspect who's going to win the tournament,
Yeah.
and um, and so forth. And it's not really win. I get that there's actually a final 8, right? But the idea that Robert was just sort of displaced by the awarding of the title of the Queen of Love and Beauty, um, as he was engaged to the Stark girl who was there, um, implies that Littlefinger's plans for Harry the Hare aren't going to go the way he thinks.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
so,
I know uh, there might be at least one on here that does not know the Shadrach Alan Reed. Um, just to give them a quick rundown, this is Toodles and Blue Limbs. I don't know from
oh, my audio
Shadrach
cut out
the
there for a
Mad.
second.
Uh, oh yeah, somebody was trying to call in. Shadrach the Mad Mouse
Okay.
is Alan Reed. And we meet him on the road to Duskin. Dale. He's with the merchant and 6 men with the wagon. And the theory is that after is it Mage Mormont and I forget who the other person was
Well,
that went.
there's lots of historical and or mythological, I suppose, because not really it's more of a myth than it is a real history, I suppose. But there's a lot of when you're talking about that far ago and so forth, that long ago. So some of the details, yeah, okay, whether it's myth or history is debatable, but there's a lot of similarities um, the between I can't remember whose bones it was, probably one of the kings of Northumbria. King of the North, but anyway, the bones being basically having the door slammed on them, and anyway, there's Toodles makes a case that those should be going to the Quiet Isle. It's a really good case, and he does kind of imply that it's likely that the Hound, as the gravedigger, was burying Ned's bones, basically.
Right.
So, okay, but House Tully is the best in sci-fi empire and fantasy. Supremacy of Tully. Anyway. And
We meet Shadrick. They're headed to the Quiet Isle. The merchant is a cover story. The 6 men that are with them are actually the honor men that were heading north with Ned's bones.
yeah, and he makes really good cases for the references to that within there and so forth, right? And meanwhile, now Blue Lemons takes a somewhat different approach, where she focuses more on the foreshadowing and how George lays out the case for how the characters are going to play out within the story, and how he sets up in the beginning of each character the story of what they're going to do, and foreshadowing and so forth. And she makes a really good case from a different approach, that essentially the same thing, right? That who the three knights are, in terms of Byron the Beautiful being the Hound, glamored, the elder brother being, is it Morgarth the Merry? Is that the name? Something like that. And then which one am I missing? Shadrick. Yeah, Howland Reed. Yeah, the main theory. Shadrick is Howland Reed, obviously. So anyway, we really like those analyses, and then we started thinking, well, one of the analyses of specifically of Dance and Danny's Marine storyline, George has actually commented on and said that he got it 100%, and so we're like, well, we should probably cover that analysis.
Right.
It's probably, especially as we're now starting it through specifically the final plot line of the books, which is the Team Targaryen, the Dany, people trying to get to Dany, and people around Dany. So
it is the slowly tying of the knot of Marinese.
Yeah. So that's what we've been focused on right now, which again, it's largely just an excuse to talk about the series. So perfectly fine for people to throw out, whatever rabbit holes they want us to chase, for us to come up with rabbit holes as we're reading through the analysis and so forth. So this is not a focused analysis of the Marinese plot, but it is that is our framing device for our discussion at this point.
Without a doubt.
All right. So continuing on, so we just wrapped up we're on part 3, and we just wrapped up the section on Dany's violent impulses, and we're about to do the section on how Dany turns away from violence toward peace. It's crazy thinking that boiling bodies' skins off to return the dead bones to their families was actually a thing in real history, and the Lord's right of the first. Well, Lord's right of, just going to say that was certainly. There's certainly been propaganda about the Lord's right of the first night. Whether it was actually a thing is somewhat debated. Kings of Hell, Rhaegar Targaryens. Sorry.
The Lord's right probably was done, but
disputed. Yeah, exactly.
Done, when the Lord or whatever found the woman attractive and needed.
Yeah, I'd believe it too, Kirsty. People use power people certainly use power to marriages certainly weren't people 100%. She said, yeah, exactly. People use power for such things. That's very clear. Anyway.
Yeah,
exactly. She says. I mean, marriages themselves were historically arranged throughout much of history. So. And still are today in some places. Lord of Demons.
People will eventually show you who they truly are.
Yeah. Well, and if they have power, they are more likely to. It is extremely likely for people to use it in such ways. So
right.
It's very believable to me. I'll put it that way. How Dany turns away from violence toward peace. But those are the last of Danny's violent and vengeful actions in Marine to date, and one of those was the torture of the daughters of a potential witness. Vengeful actions in Marine to date. Motivated by Hosea's death, Astapor, her innate compassion, and her fear of herself, Danny decides to turn away from a path of violence. Okay, but Ned needs help with Lyanna. And Ned needs to help Lyanna? Okay. Okay, continue. Motivated by Hosea's death, Danny decides to turn away from path violence. First of all, she chains her dragons. As mentioned, she does this because of Hosea's death, but the action is fraught with symbolic import. She's actually trying to chain her own violent impulses and potential to kill innocents. Second, despite further harpy killings, she refuses to harm the child hostages. I argued in part 2 that this was likely very important in changing the Marinese nobles' perceptions of Danny and making peace possible. Danny's 4th chapter is a turning point in her rule. First, the Green Grace visits, and after praising her mercy toward the hostages, suggests that Danny could make peace with the Harpy by marrying Hisdar. For the good of her people, Danny thinks she should, and we just covered that chapter, right?
Yep.
A highborn king of pure Giscari blood could reconcile the city to your rule. Elsewise, I fear your reign must end as it began, in blood and fire. Daenerys Targaryen had other children, tens of thousands, who had hailed her as their mother, and when she broke their chains. She thought of stalwart Shield, Missandei's brother, of the woman Rellona Ray, who had played the harp so beautifully. No marriage would ever bring them back to life, but if a husband could help end the slaughter, then she owed it to her dead to marry. Hisdar's son-up says he can make peace with the Harpy and outlines what it would cost to eventually make peace in Yunkai as well. The Yunkai can be persuaded to allow all your freedmen to remain free, I believe, if your worship will agree that the Yellow City may trade and train slaves unmolested from this day forth. No more blood need flow. Save for the blood of those slaves that the Yunkai will trade and train, Danny said, but she recognized the truth in his words even so. It may be that is the best end we can hope for. The eventual conditions of both peace deals have now been laid out. Danny is intrigued at this other path, and for the good of her people, challenges Hisdar to see if he can truly stop the violence. Peace is my desire. You say that you can help me end the nightly slaughter in my streets. I say do it. Put an end to this shadow war, my lord. That is your quest. Give me 90 days and 90 nights without a murder, and I will know that you are worthy of a throne. Can you do that? My people are bleeding, dying. A queen belongs not to herself, but to the realm. Marriage or carnage, those are my choices. A wedding or a war. Old New Dude and Richard, is there any chance at all that Danny could actually be a child of the forest? That's interesting, because there's certainly this concept that symbolically she might wind up being a Nissa Nissa character, and there's certainly lots of clues that Nissa Nissa might have child of the Forest blood. Well, okay, so if the Starks actually are blood of the children of the Forest, and that's where their magic comes from, then yes, right? So that's about the best I can say, though, is that I would think that would be through Stark blood, and if you don't believe that Danny has Stark blood, see Triple Targaryens episode 4.
On that note, we have the children of the forest that are slightly different. In Essos, could be the blood that is responsible, or part of the combination that made dragons and dragon riders possible.
If a Kevron, sure.
Which would be the source of Targaryen's blood. So you would, if that is possible,
okay,
then you have.
Oh, okay. They're supposed to be these shepherds. So the Valerians are these shepherds that perhaps were being experimented on by the Great Empire of the Dawn. They maybe had blood through the Iphicaveron. That was then used to allow them to bind dragons, which was then used to overthrow their slavers and then become slavers themselves. It's just kind of like Yunkai. Or is that Astapor? I guess that's Astapor. Astapor, yeah. Anyway, yeah, okay, I'll buy that. So in that case, she kind of would have. So if both sources of magic are actually from essentially children of the forest like creatures, then she's uniting the two different types of children of the forest creatures.
That's
become the
why
Sullivan
we
Rights
did
Fire.
not get a Stark that married a Targaryen in was it Cregan that was promised a bride or his child
Yeah,
promised?
yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah.
There was no marriage there. And didn't
Well,
Briella was
there
the
actually
son.
is there actually is one that's referred to as like the bond of ice and fire or something like that. And it's actually like I think it's actually like either
Harris.
a Jon Snow or a Brandon Snow or something. No, Sarah Snow. It's Sarah Snow too. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
But we
So
didn't get
that's to Luke.
fruition of that union going forward. Meaning there wasn't a child between. Was it Jaehaerys that went and
Uh,
met with Cregan?
is it Jace? I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember the. You know me, I'm not Targaryen
She always
loyalist.
reads as one of me, and she seems to just know things, whether it's magic, about ancient history, languages, and accents, etc. Stuff she wouldn't be privy to. She just knows. Yeah, it's definitely not made clear how she knows exactly what to do that with the dragons,
I
right?
think the knowledge is the same as some of the, like the Ghost of High Heart, the ability to read God speak from the wind. When she sleeps, it's osmosis. It's her receiving images and ceremonies and whatever knowledge through the air, um, through the wind that she's picking up. God speak the same, but she doesn't understand it. She perceives it as dreams. A lot of times she probably doesn't even remember it, and then therefore she's picking up knowledge without having to work for it. Um, which it might be that her bloodline or her wishes is what's causing her to sit there and flip through the Dewey Decimal System and try to figure out what knowledge she needs. Um, and that's what she perceives when she sleeps and dreams, that type of stuff. So yeah, maybe.
At this point, though, Danny's not yet fully committed to following through. She tells Barristan, 90 days is a long time. His star may fail. The chapter closes with two temptations, where characters offer Danny seductive alternatives that have far less concern for innocent life and Marine. First, Barristan advises her to just leave and go to Westeros. He also reminds her that marrying Hisdar would hurt her chances for taking Westeros. For purposes of conquering Westeros, this is good advice, but from the perspective of someone concerned about innocent life and Marine, would only condemn the Marinese to an Astapor-like fate. Westeros is far away. Lingering here will never bring it any closer. The sooner we take our leave of this place. I know. I do. They did not know how to make him see. She wanted Westeros as much as he did, but first she must heal Marine. Finally, Dany meets with Daario. Many fans come away thinking Dany's attraction to Daario merely reveals her girlishness and immaturity. But in A Dance with Dragons, Daario's main importance is to symbolize the path of war. Violent, amoral, charismatic, seductive, taking what one wants, and to tempt Dany toward that path. Every single time the two meet, Daario proposes some bloody and violent action to break the peace. Dany's attraction to him shows that some part of her is quite drawn to this mindset. Here, Daario proposes that Dany deal with the Marinese nobles, not through peaceful compromise, but through a red wedding. We'll them out of their pyramids on some pretext. A wedding might serve. Why not? Promise your hand to Hisdar, and all the great masters will come to see you married. When they gather in the Temple of the Graces, turn us loose upon them. Dany was appalled. He is a monster. A gallant monster, but a monster still. Is Daario
Gallant?
giving good advice? Or did I say gallant or did I not?
Yeah, I mean,
Gallant.
yeah, he's a monster, but he's a gallant monster. I mean, she's so infatuated, it's not even funny.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that
He
gallant to me either.
Yeah, does he represent the Targaryen side, the dragon side of her
Yeah,
character?
yeah, which makes you wonder, right? I mean, she plus her attraction to him and the Targaryens being almost involuntarily attracted to their close
His eyes
relatives.
are so blue, they're almost purple.
Yeah, he's got this blue dye, and it's implied that could be turning purple eyes into blue eyes, right? Um, she also reads like she's been reborn. She's lived before, and it's Memories from her past life where she's drawing her knowledge from. Yeah, maybe.
Possible. Well, that would make her a lot like a other side of the coin of Bran. If the
And
theory of
the Tar in Targaryen means tree, Kirsty says.
okay,
Okay. That would make a lot of sense.
yeah, but like I say, to be the other side of the coin of Bran. Bran's possibly lived different lives through all the Brandons being the same person. Danny may have previous lives
Yeah, yeah, I like that. This idea that um,
reincarnation.
oh, and there's always been the question: is this Bran versus John? Is this Bran versus Danny? Is this John versus Danny? Is this Bran and John versus Danny? Right. That's um, in terms of the final of this, right? So I mean, the whole concept of ice and fire is that there's an ice invasion and a fire invasion, and fire in the poem Fire and Ice that George is referencing, fire is about basically passion and anger and people and caring, and ice is about a lack of caring. Um, and so you've got this lack of this invaders that you don't care about and that don't care about humans, and then you've got this invader who you do care about and who does care about humans, right? Um, anyway, is Daryl giving good advice? Well, how are things working out for the phrase lately? Danny's outraged and sends him away, again hearkening back to her greatest fear of herself and what she could become. He would make a monster of me, she whispered, a butcher queen. But we will later see that Daria's words have lingered in her mind. Will Danny follow through on the peace? Peacemaking isn't easy. It's painful, challenging, risky, and by necessity involves you not getting everything you want. After the terms of the eventual peace deals are outlined in Danny 4, her next 3 chapters represent a slow, agonizing trudge toward her eventual acceptance of the deal. But in them, the cruel god, George R. Martin, puts her through the ringer by throwing 3 general types of plot elements at her. 1. Unpleasant concessions she'll have to make for the peace. 2. New temptations to break the peace. And 3. Wrenching reminders about what breaking the peace would mean for innocent life. These events are all quite unpleasant for Danny, some especially unpleasant. As she becomes more and more unhappy, it becomes clear that the drama of this part of her arc is all about whether she'll be able to force herself to stick to the peace deal. Her first temptation is from the Shave Pate. Though the harpy killing stopped nearly a month ago, there are submarinese ships participating in the Carthene blockade. Shave Pate, conveniently, implicates every single ruling family of Marinas participating and suggests arresting all their relatives in the city. Danny refuses, putting aside action against her enemies in favor of peace, but she wonders if she's being naive. Your worship should have a look at this. A list of all the Marinese ships in the blockade, with their captains. Great masters all. Danny studied the scroll. All the ruling families of Marine were named. Haskar, Merrick, Quasar, Zok, Razdar, Gazin, Paul, even Resnak and Lorak. What am I to do with a list of names? Every man on that list has kin within the city. Sons and brothers, wives and daughters, mothers and fathers. Let my brazen beast seize them. Their lives will win you back to those ships. If I send the brazen beast into the pyramids, it will mean open war inside the city. I have to trust in Hisdar. I have to hope for peace. Then he held the parchment above a candle and watched the names go up in flame while Skahaz glowered at her. And of course, this has to remind us a little bit of Jaime burning Cersei's letter. All right, Jaime is asking Cersei to fight. Cersei is asking Jaime to fight for her, and he chooses not to. Right, and and Cersei is kind of a monster, and wanting to go to war with everyone and so forth.
Right,
So,
which we also think Shave Pate is cooking the books on who the bad guys are.
of course,
personal reasons. They might not
well,
have any family.
That's why he says conveniently. That's why he says conveniently. He's implying that he doesn't really believe this is really the right list.
Right.
Afterward, Sebastian told her that her brother Rhaegar would have been proud of her. Then he remembered the words Sir Jorah had spoken at Astapor. Rhaegar fought valiantly. Rhaegar fought nobly. Rhaegar fought honorably. And Rhaegar died. And yeah, those words ring in with Danny multiple times throughout the series. Next, Danny hears a prolonged report of the situation of the Astapori refugees. Danny regrets not doing more for them earlier, but is grudgingly convinced that any help she gave them would have put Marine at risk. This is another important feature of the piece. Dany has to restrain her desire to right every wrong in the world and fix every injustice, to focus only on her own city. And again, the guilt of using her power wrongly haunts her. I know. It is Araya all over again. Brown Ben Plum was puzzled. Who's Araya? A girl I thought I'd save from rape and torment. All I did was make it worse for her in the end, and all I didn't ask for was make 10,000 Arayas. Your Grace could not have known. I'm the Queen. It was my place to know. Meanwhile, the Yunkish are approaching. Plum advises her to loose the dragons on them, but Hosea is brought up, and Dany refuses. Barristan urges sending out the Unsullied, but Dany knows she would lose control of Meereen if she did so. Backed into a corner, she realizes what she has to do for her people, though she can barely say it. She has to give up her body, marrying herself off for the greater good. I cannot fight two enemies, one within and one without. If I am to hold Meereen, I must have the city behind me, the whole city. I need, she could not say it. Your Grace, said Barristan prompted gently. The Queen belongs not to herself, but to her people. I need Histar Zolorak. Next, she visits the Astapori refugee camp herself and organizes humanitarian food aid to the starving hordes. Though their plight saddens Dany, she enjoys helping them and thinking of herself as a mother. Afterward, she has a humiliating wedding planning meeting with the Green Grace and Resnack, who say that Meereenese culture requires Dany's womb to be examined by Histar's family. She refuses this, but must accept all the other cultural preconditions for the wedding, despite finding them ridiculous, and thinks of Brown Ben's comment that if a man wants to be king of the rabbits, he best wear a pair of floppy ears. She also recalls a very different comment. Your worship must marry Histar in the Temple of the Graces, with all the nobility of Meereen on hand to bear witness to your union. Get the heads of all the noble houses out of their pyramids on some pretext, Dario had said. The dragon's words are fire and blood. Then he pushed the thought aside. It was not worthy of her. As you wish, she sighed. I shall marry Histar in the Temple of the Graces, wrapped in a white tokar fringed with baby pearls. Is there anything else? So a tempting, violent path flashes in Dany's mind, but she pushes it aside. Next, as a final humiliation, she's told she must reopen the fighting pits, a bloody Meereenese cultural practice that she despises. She reminds herself that a queen must listen to her people, and says Histar can do it. But she wants no part of it. Histar then visits and confirms that Yunkai will agree to peace if Dany allows slavery outside Meereen's walls and if he and Dany wed. Marriage or carnage, a wedding or a war, are those my choices? I see only one choice, your radiance. Let us say our vows before the gods of Gis and make a new Meereen together. The Queen was framing her response when she heard a step behind her. This very moment, Martin presents Dany with another temptation. Barristan tells her that Dario has returned and he is wounded. Dany never responds to Histar and her thoughts are revealing. Blood? Said Dany, horrified. Is that a jape? No, don't tell me. I must see for myself. She was a young girl and alone, and young girls can change their minds. Convene my captains and commanders. Histar, I know you will forgive me. Meereen must come first, Histar smiled genially. We will have other nights, 1,000 nights. When Dario enters, he reveals the infuriating news that Brown Ben Plum has defected to Yunkai. This worsening of her military position forces Dany to her most unpleasant compromise yet. She decides she must close the gates to the Astapori and let them starve. For Meereen, she has to, but it tears her apart. She's named Missa, Mother, with Mummy being a variant, and Daenerys, the Dane, is spelled Dane in Old Norse means dead one. Fire, blood, sorcery reads a lot like Akasha, Queen of the Damned. Okay. And then that makes you wonder if Ashara Dane's name is actually more about this concept that she's been named as dead, even though she's not really dead. Okay. As opposed to me always saying the Dione. That's I like that.
Yeah.
And this is revealing. Dany has hated many of her compromises for the Meereenese, but above all else, she hates forcing herself to tolerate injustice elsewhere. And this compromise makes her so miserable that she immediately flirts with breaking the peace deal entirely, via Dario. She wanted to scream, to gnash her teeth and tear her clothes and beat upon the floor. Instead, she said, "Close the gates. Will you make me say it thrice?" They were her children, but she could not help them now. "Leave me. Dario, remain." Dany then begins her affair. I'll save most of my thoughts on Dario for a later post, but for now, Suffice to say, her affair places the peaceful deal at great risk. It symbolizes how she is somewhat attracted to the easier and more pleasing path of war. However, despite this reckless behavior by Danny, the peace deal and the wedding proceed, and despite Danny's increasing love for Dario, she gives him up.
That she starts her affair with Dario because Dario is wounded. Rob gets wounded and has an affair with the Westerling daughter. So that's the opposite side of that coin there too. Just the roles are reversed.
And she goes through with the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
She goes through, whereas Rob breaks off his wedding. Yep. I like that. Asher is also the name of God's wife and Satan's mother. Do tell. Secrets of Targaryens, episode 1. Before the wedding, Martin gives Danny one final test. When Quentin arrives, Martin is effectively asking Danny which she cares about more, making peace for the Myronese or her future prospects in Westeros. Then she chooses Meereen, easily and without a second thought. The prospect of Westeros has receded for her. While she still claims she intends to go one day, her statement reveals how much she has shelved those ambitions. The day I shall return to Westeros. One day I shall return to Westeros and to claim my father's throne and look to Dorne for help. But on this day, the Yunkai have my city ringed in steel. I may die before I see my 7 kingdoms. Histar may die. Westeros may be swallowed by the waves. Danny kissed his cheek. Come, it's time I wed. Then she does, and the peace is made. Conclusion. For peace, Danny has chained her dragons, restrained her impulses toward violent revenge, agreed to marry a man she doesn't love, agreed to abandon a man she does love, agreed to share power with people she detests, agreed to allow slavery outside Marie's walls, agreed to indulge various cultural practices she dislikes, and given up her best chance at Westeros, her body, and potentially her own happiness, and, toughest of all, agreed to let thousands of Astapori starve outside her gates. She wasn't perfect and did flirt with abandoning and risking the peace at times, but her overall course of action here is an impressive and astonishing series of self-sacrifices and self-submissions, all for her people. And if Danny's arc in the book ended with her marriage, it would be the story of how she summoned the immense courage and self-restraint to make those sacrifices. But her arc doesn't end here. Next, Danny's change of heart. Part 4, A Darker Daenerys. In A Dance with Dragons, the drama of Danny's arc is in her struggle with herself. In her final chapters, the struggle is resolved. Earlier in the book, motivated by fear of her own violent side and what it could mean for innocent life, Danny devoted herself to making peace in Meereen. She told herself again and again that she had to do this for her people. She's willing to subsume all other parts of her personality and all of her other desires to achieve this peace. She knew that when she unleashed her violent side in the past, the end result was only devastation. The horrors of Astapor and Hosea weighed heavily on her mind. So, difficultly and amazingly, she achieved that peace for Meereen. And once she does, she becomes utterly miserable and concludes it was a failure and a mistake. Peace and War in A Song of Ice and Fire. Before we get into Danny's rejection of the peace, let's put it in context with the series. Martin has said part of his project is to always portray both sides of war, the glorious stirrings one may feel in the moment, and the bloody and awful aftermath. He doesn't want us ever to forget that. Though it might feel good to go to war, the consequences of throwing the country into chaos are slaughtered and raped innocents, broken men, feasts for crows, war making monsters of us all. Now, Martin is not a total pacifist. He said he would have fought in World War II, and he seems to think war is perfectly justifiable for self-defense or to confront a truly great evil. But from the amount of time he spends lingering on war's awful consequences, it's pretty clear that he thinks a whole ton of wars that sound good in theory are actually horrific in practice. That sounds familiar. Anyway, sorry, we're what, 3.5 weeks into a war of choice right now. Anyway, it's April 1st, 2026 for anybody who's watching this long from now.
Yeah.
From the amount of time he spends lingering on war's awful consequences, it's pretty clear that he thinks, I said that it's not good theory, actually horrific in practice. Again and again, he's urged the reader to bask in awesome feel-good moments of warmongering, such as Rob's King of the North crowning, Danny's Dracarys in Astapor, and Duran's Fire and Blood speech to Arianne, only to completely undercut those moments later, showing how those decisions were actually disastrous mistakes with horrific results. It's always the innocents who suffer most when the High Lords play their Game of Thrones. I would throw in Catelyn seizing Tyrion there, and maybe even the birth of dragons. Anyway, um, my point being, the most epic moments of the series are usually people choosing something that is escalating towards war, and it
Right.
feels amazing at the moment, and it often turns out to be a huge mistake, which makes me wonder whether the dragons really. Um, I'm not sold on the born to burn the others theory of LML. So anyway. After dwelling on war and its consequences in the first four books, Martin turns
Is
his attention.
the possibility that it is the others that stand up to the dragons that save
Hmm.
Westeros.
I do think it's quite likely that they represent the escalation of war and nuclear weapons and so forth, and that Martin
Well, I mean,
doesn't want
George
that to
like,
be
yeah.
the hero of the story.
Well, I mean, George like takes take tropes and turn them on their head. Like the good guys were white, bad guys were black. He said he swapped it in this. Maybe he didn't swap it. It's actually still the same. The good guys were white, the bad guys were black. It's just that we have supported the guys in black and are shunning the guys in white in this story. And George is going to pull a fast one on us, and it's actually the other way around. So if Dany at the end so far where we're at in her story has embraced her dragon side and Drogon has now said, okay, she's a Targaryen again, I'll support her, and she stays a Targaryen going forward with Fire and Blood and brings Fire and Blood to Westeros, then what's to stop her?
I could definitely see George's point being that humanity will unite to face a common cause and then go right back to warring with itself. That could very easily be that seems. I really do think they were trying to show the big moments of the series. I think that the bells is about John Cunnington.
Right.
I don't think that means Dany is going to mass slaughter innocents and I but there's going to be a lot of innocents that die because of war in Westeros.
Can't drink.
After dwelling on war and the consequences in the first four books, Martin turns his attention to peacemaking in A Dance with Dragons. Now, peace is often idealized as a happy, sunshiny state where all is well and everyone holds hands. Martin clearly has a more realistic view. He thinks peace is incredibly difficult to achieve, often unsatisfying, never guaranteed to last. Sorry?
They hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
It's a more realistic view. He thinks peace is incredibly difficult to achieve, often unsatisfying, never guaranteed to last, and requires much effort to maintain. There will always be plots and people who see war as in their interest. And crucially, peace often involves letting many injustices continue rather than trying to right all the world's wrongs. With peace, you never get everything you want. This is why war is such a seductive option. In comparison to peace, war is simple. War clarifies things. War means you can try to take what you want through force of arms rather than giving up some things you want. War can be well-meaning, and not all wars are started by wicked people. Indeed, much of the Dance with Dragons is about how and why good, sympathetic characters can willingly choose to discard peace in favor of war. Despite the shortcomings of peace, Martin views it as incredibly worthwhile and valuable. Considering the consequences of war he's outlined, how could he not? Indeed, I would go so far as to speculate that he agrees with the Green Grace in Barristan's final chapter, as she desperately begs Barristan to restore the peace by freeing Hisdar. She tells him that the decision to discard peace is a tragedy because, in return, he gave her peace. Do not cast it away, sir. I beg you. Peace is the pearl beyond price. Yet Dany comes to believe the price of peace is too high. Why Dany becomes dissatisfied with peace? Dany knows the consequences of war and has been tormented about them since Book 1. When the battle was done, Dany rode her silver through the fields of the dead. Across the road, a girl no older than Dany was sobbing in a high, thin voice as a rider shoved her over a pile of corpses, face down, and thrust himself inside her. Other riders dismounted to take their turns. That was the sort of deliverance the Dothraki brought the Lamb men. Slaves, Dany thought. Khal Drogo would drive them downriver to one of the towns on Slaver's Bay. She wanted to cry, but she told herself that she must be strong. This is war. This is what it looks like. This is the price of the Iron Throne. As I mentioned, the internal conflict is restarted in earnest at the end of A Storm of Swords, the fate of Astapor, and continuing into A Dance with Dragons with the fate of Hosea. But as the book proceeds, Dany starts to reckon with the price of peace as well. Part of Dany has always yearned for peace and simplicity in a generic, idealized sense. This is symbolized by the house with the red door of her happiest childhood years. What are you looking at? My city, said Danny. I was looking for a house with a red door, but by night all the doors are black. Is it Dario? What's happened? In her dream they had been man and wife, simple folk, who lived a simple life in a tall stone house with a red door. She would rather have drifted in the fragrant pool all day, eating iced fruit off silver trays and dreaming of a house with a red door, but a queen belongs to her people, not to herself. But life is not a song, and happily ever after only happens in stories. Peace in the real world is not so idyllic. Does it matter that Histar's kisses do not please me? Peace will please me. I hate this, thought Daenerys Targaryen. How did this happen? That I am drinking and smiling with men I'd sooner flay. This is peace, she told herself. This is what I wanted, what I worked for. This is why I married Histar. So why does it taste so much like defeat? In her 2 post-peace chapters in Marine, Dany is a cauldron of anger and misery. In theory, Dany was willing to compromise on her values, share power, and tolerate some injustices in the world without violently trying to fix them, all to protect innocent life in Marine. In practice, it all ends up feeling intolerable for her. Then he comes to despise the peace for several intertwined reasons. For one, the above quote shows she doesn't like feeling that her enemies have defeated her, when she'd rather kill them. This is also emphasized after she speaks to the treacherous Brown Ben Plum, feels defeated, and then schemes to have him killed. Is there some man in the Second Sons who might be persuaded to remove Brown Ben? Another is that she hates feeling powerless and not in control. The street ahead had finally cleared. Shall we continue on? What could she do but nod? One step, then the next. But where is it I'm going? One step and then another. Anyway, actually, I think it starts with Jon and the Frostfangs, but it's most famous with Sam.
Right.
She begins to feel mistrust.
That Brown Ben turning his cloak had to happen so Tyrion survived.
Yep.
You found. I mean, there's certain situations where I think it's a move on the board of the Giant Cybass game.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
To give Tyrion a place to go instead of dying with all the other slaves.
Random leaping, hidden fingers, divine intervention, call it what you will.
Yep.
She begins to feel mistrustful and paranoid, seeing potential insults and treacheries everywhere. The tumblers who came next failed to move her either, even when they formed a human pyramid 9 levels high with a naked little girl on top. Is that meant to represent my pyramid, the queen wondered? Is the girl on top meant to be me? If Histar's peace should break, I want to be ready. I do not trust the slavers. I do not trust my husband. They will turn on us at the first sign of weakness. She finds that she loathes allowing injustice to continue. When peace necessarily involves letting injustices continue. Some of these are specific conditions of the peace she agreed to, that she now regrets. They've opened a slave market within sight of my walls. Outside your walls, sweet queen. That was a condition of the peace. The Yunkai would be free to trade slaves as before, unmolested. Yunkai will trade in slaves, Marine will not. This is what we have agreed. Endure this for a little while longer, and it shall pass. All of the entertainers were slaves. That had been part of the peace. Slave owners be allowed the right to bring their chattel into Marine without fear of having them freed. In return, the Yunkai had promised to respect the rights and liberties of the former slaves that Dany had freed. A fair bargain, Histar said. The taste that left in the queen's mouth was foul. She drank another cup of wine to wash it out. Sometimes she perceives injustice when it's actually an incremental improvement. She just has trouble accepting as a victory. Those bearers were slaves before I came. I made them free, yet that palanquin is no lighter. True, said Histar, but those men are paid to bear its weight now. Before you came, that man who fell would have an overseer standing over him, stripping the skin off his back with a whip. Instead, he's being given aid. It was true. A brazen beast in a war mask had offered the litter bearer a skin of water. I suppose I must be thankful for small victories, the queen said. One step, then the next, and soon we shall be running. Together we shall make a new Marine. 6 and 10, Histar insisted. A man grown who freely chose to risk his life for gold and glory. No children die today in Draznax. It's my gentle queen and her wisdom has decreed. Another small victory. Perhaps I cannot make my people good, she told herself, but I should at least try to make them a little less bad. Sometimes she is correct that she perceives an unjust violation of what she's agreed to, but she can resolve it through negotiation in the political process. To truly build a new and stable Marine, She will have to butt heads with the less savory desires of Hisdar and the nobles, day in and day out, for years, peacefully, as she does below. You swore to me that the fighters would be grown men who had freely consented to risk their lives for gold and honor. These dwarfs did not consent to battle lions with wooden swords. You will stop it now. The king's mouth tightened. For a heartbeat, Dany thought she saw a flash of anger in those placid eyes. As you command. And we have discussed that multiple times, right? Yeah, part of the point, as he says, is that Hisdar and the nobles, they do have a desire to be the monsters that she has ended, right?
Right.
But they understand that, just as she does, that they cannot have everything they want, and that when they are in violation of the agreement, that they have to correct that. For all these reasons, Dany is very antsy and unhappy in these chapters, and responds by quickly flirting with breaking the peace in two ways. First, she starts scheming to win the loyalties of the youngish sellswords. She suggests having Brown Ben Plum killed by his own men, and also recommends reaching out to their other three companies. Do it soon. If Histar's peace should break, I want to be ready. I do not trust the slavers. I do not trust my husband. They will turn on us at the first sign of weakness. The Yunkai grow weaker as well. The bloody flux has taken hold amongst the Teloshi, it is said, and spread across the river to the third Yuskari Legion. Dany legitimately feels like she has to do this because her foes will betray her, but argued in part 2 that the Harpy and Yunkai both intended to keep the peace. Dany is exaggerating her foes' treachery and their strength. Gerson points out they're being weakened by the Pale Mare. Next, Dany decides to summon Quentyn and dangle her dragons in front of him. She appears to be trying to test Quentyn's mettle, telling him her marriage need not be the end of all your hopes. Gerson rightly sees that little good can come of this. Bring him to me. It is time he met my children. A flicker of doubt passed across the long, solemn face of Bertham Selmy. As you command. Daenerys backwards. Sereniad has siren in it, and reads like serenade, tying it to singers and song of the sea and sirens serenading you, singing a song to lure you to your death. Okay, I like that. But Dany managed to get through the night, eventually falling asleep to dream queer, half-formed dreams of smoke and fire. The fighting pits. The fighting pits are a symbol of everything Dany hates about the piece, but there's a good deal of ambiguity to how we as readers are supposed to feel about them. They're obviously based on the Roman gladiators in the Colosseum. Westerosi like Dany and Barristan perceive it as an obviously horrific practice, signifying the corruption of the Marinese culture, but literally everyone in Marine seems to want them reopened. With Dany's reforms, the fighters should all be volunteers or condemned murderers or rapers. The former slaves beg to be allowed to fight to earn glory and money. I've heard your arguments so often I could plead your case myself, shall I? Dany leaned forward. The fighting pits have been a part of Marines since the city was founded. The combats are profoundly religious in nature, a blood sacrifice to the gods of Gis. The mortal art of Gis is not mere butchery, but a display of courage, skill, and strength, most pleasing to your gods. Victorious, and it definitely sounds like boxing as the sweet science. Victorious fighters are pampered and acclaimed, and the slain are honored and remembered. By reopening the pits, I should show the people of Marine that I respect their ways and customs. The pits are far famed across the world. They draw trade to Marine and fill the city's coffers with coin from the ends of the earth. All men share a taste for blood, a taste the pits help slake. In that way, they make Marine more tranquil. For criminals condemned to die upon the sands, the pits represent a judgment by battle, a last chance for a man to prove his innocence. Dany grimaced. Even her own people would give no rest about the matter. Resnack Mo Resnack stressed the coin to be made through taxes. The Green Grey said that reopening the pits would please the gods. The Shape felt it would win her support against the Sons of the Harpy. Let them fight, grunted Strong Belwas. I train since 3, said Gogor the giant. I kill since 6. Mother of Dragons says I am free. Why not free to fight? Yet Dany just cannot stand the things, and interestingly, she never actually tries to counter the arguments of Hisdar or the pit fighters. She never really articulates why she hates them so. She just considers them obviously barbaric and therefore aberrant. So it's hard to say Dany is actually taking a moral stance here. She constantly thinks about how she'll have blood on her hands if she reopens the pits. But instead of any truly terrible injustice, pits seem to signify her inability to overcome her cultural disconnect with the Marinese. Of course, a brutal war and an ass-to-pour like fate on Marine would put much more blood on her hands than a mere bit of consensual fighting pit fun would, as Dany reflects here. Orson of Blackhair was going to face a boar, his tusks against her dagger. Kraz was fighting, as was the spotted cat. And in the day's final pairing, Gogor the Giant would go against Belliquo Bonebreaker. One would be dead before the sun went down. No queen has clean hands, Danny told herself. She thought of Dorea, of Quaro, of Aroa, of the little girl she had never met whose name had been Hosea. Better a few should die in the pit than thousands at the gates. This is the price of peace. I pay it willingly. If I look back, I am lost. And as we said, the whole point of if I look back, I am lost is that at some point that's going to have a payoff.
Right.
The Watchers, fallen angels, took human women as wives that birthed giant Nephilim. The women were cursed, turned into sirens. It tracks the old man's tale of the long night and maybe Danny Flint. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, so in this instance, the Nephilim would be the others, right?
I think that's the concept, yeah.
Okay.
Much like the piece itself, the pit's proven impossible for Danny to stomach. As mentioned above, she correctly objects to the true injustice of Tyrion and Penny potentially being forced to fight lions.
The women that were cursed turned into sirens. Wouldn't that be the Children of the Forest, the singer of the old whatever?
Yeah. Well, and they are the singers, so okay.
Yeah.
And they're kind of luring Bran up north.
Is Nephilim were giant. The most notorious would be the Goliath, the David faced. So that would be the previous long night from the last long night, the one before that. So 2 long nights to go. The fighters were the Children of the Forest and the Giants, and that is both sides of what this comment is the sirens and the giants would be the Children of the Forest and the Giants. So is there a cycle? A woman lays with the other, gives birth to a giant. The woman is turned into a Children of the Forest, thus creating the Children of the Forest and Giant cycle. Then humans come along, replace the Children of the Forest and the Giants as the combatants in the next long night. The others come down to eradicate the humans to get it back to Children of the Forest and Giants. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Sorry, I started Googling things and looking for words and stuff. I got a little distracted there. Sorry. Anyway.
I was having mouth diarrhea, just trying to get the thought process out of my head. That's what my brain sounds like.
Sorry, I should have paid more attention.
No, that's okay. It probably didn't mean anything to me. I mean, what she said was probably.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Any riffing on it's probably worth doing. Where was I? Proven possible for Danny's stomach, as mentioned above, she correctly objects to true injustice being forced to fight lions. It rather prevents it from happening, which seems nearly as disturbed by the consensual fighting. After several matches, there's finally the gory death of the female fighter Bersenna, who earlier chose quite willingly to embrace the possibility for death and petitioned Danny specifically for the right to fight. And the losers, what shall they receive? Their names shall be graven on the gates of fate amongst the other valiant fallen, declared Bersenna. For 8 years, she had slain every other woman sent against her, it was said. All men must die, and women too, but not all will be remembered. Daenerys would have prohibited contests between women as well, but Bersenna Blackhair protested that she had as much right to risk her life as any man. It's interesting that Martin chose Bersenna's death as the last straw for Dany rather than a moment of more straightforward injustice. For it is at that very moment that she decides to throw away her Myronese tokar, a very important act symbolizing her rejection of Myronese culture, and leave the pits. The boar buried his snout in Bersenna's belly and began rooting out her entrails. The smell was more than the queen could stand. The heat, the flies, the shouts from the crowd. I cannot breathe. She lifted her veil and let it flutter away. She took her tokar off as well. The pearls rattled softly against one another as she unwound the silk. Khaleesi, Irri asked, what are you doing? Taking off my floppy ears. And just then, at the moment of Dany's highest dissatisfaction with both the peace and the Myronese themselves, Drogon returns. Whether this timing is purely symbolic or whether it's magical in some way, it's surely not an accident on Martin's part. Take me from this abattoir, husband. She could hear the boar snorting, the shouts of the spearmen, the crack of the pitmaster's whip. Sweet lady, no. Stay only a while longer, for the folly and one last match. Close your eyes, no one will see. They'll be watching Bellicourt and Gogor. There is no time for... A shadow rippled across his face. Suddenly, and very cleverly, the cultural script is flipped. This whole time, Danny had felt superior to the Pyrenees because of their love for the fighting pits, even complaining that, I cannot make my people good. But now, as Drogon devours Bersenna and the boar, the Pyrenees are the ones horrified by the scene. And Danny's sympathy is completely reversed, and she can only think of defending her dragon. As he began to feed, he made no distinction between Bersenna and the boar. Oh gods, moaned Resnack, he's eating her! Kill it! Hissar Zolark shouted to the other spearmen. Kill the beast! Sebastian held her tightly. Look away, your grace. Let me go! Danny twisted from his grasp. The world seemed to slow as she cleared the parapet. When she landed in the pit, she lost a sandal. Sounds kind of
No white
Cinderella-ish.
Cinderella, yeah.
And then she faces down Drogon, thinks that they are both fire-made flesh, jumps on his back, and flies away from Marine and her piece. Reborn in the Dothraki Sea. What do you think? We should probably stop here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a pretty long section. Yeah, we should stop here. Reborn in the Dothraki Sea. That's where we are.
With
I'm
her
going to make a note.
And that being her mount in the Dothraki Sea, the scene in the show where the Dothraki are riding into Marine and there's just a shit ton of them out there just riding it, I can see that happening now. The scene where Jamie and Bronn are looking, and it's the Dothraki riding to them, and there's Danny on Drogon just kind of cruising over the top of them. I can see that coming into Marine, and Brown Ben better hope that he can explain and be fighting possibly side by side with Barristan before Danny can get him in Dragonfire for the betrayal, which I'm sure is going to happen because I mean Tyrion's going to get to her, so Brown Ben's going to be able to get to her and say, "Oh, it was a ruse. I went to their side to find out their strength and to stab them from within type situation." But yeah.
Is that season 2 you were talking about, Kirsty? So Kirsty says in House of the Dragon in the intro, there's showing the blood magic for dragons. There's a woman who to her looks like a harpy. I feel like I do remember that. The harpies were used in Valeria's bioengineering humanoid beasts. Okay, that makes sense.
Well, I think the harpies were another attempt at creating weapons of mass destruction. It was another one of
their experiments.
Their attempt at
it's the first season. Okay. Seems like I do remember something resembling that. I would have guessed. I don't know, keep them straight, but I would have guessed that would have been the second season in the Tapestries rather than the first season when they're mostly focused on the genealogy aspect.
And they were doing the blood through the model.
Yeah, but I think there are some background things going on there as well. So and harpies are tied to Persephone and the underworld. Yeah, there's obviously references to that with Littlefinger and Sansa. So, all right. Well, we're at 59 minutes.
Yep. And we got the Windblown on Friday.
Sounds good.
Just a quick note: my puppy / pain in the ass had another bad night, but luckily it was not as bad as the last week. So I was like, man, I told him we were doing the video today, and my dog is not wanting to cooperate. So from started at midnight, it lasted till like 1:30, just wanting to be a pain in the butt. Just, I mean, it's a dog. I mean, sometimes it all involves the small Chihuahua. They have small prey instincts that once those instinct kicks in, you got to redirect. So yeah, it was fun. but it wasn't as bad as last week, so I was able to do today's video. So,
Good. I mean,
yeah,
not good that you had such problems, but in the on and the seasons, yeah, absolutely.
there you go.
Yeah, and it was probably LML that first pointed out that the season seemed to change with the Kings changing, and the year of the false spring probably kind of represents this idea that they were almost changed the king and then they didn't, right? Kids, says Kirsty. Yep,
There
puppy
you go.
kids in this case.
Yep. All right. So we'll see y'all Friday for the Windblown. Thank y'all for joining us from Australia to Brazil. We're world famous. We appreciate it. Y'all have fun. Take care. And seasons with
Seasons will tie to the underworld. They're definitely intended to match the concepts of the mythology. That's for sure.
without a doubt. So y'all be good.
All right.
Take care. And bye. Bye, Richard.
You know, yep. We know what you're talking about. Bye.
Bye.